Hello, everybody. It's good to see you. I'm glad that you could join us today. I just want to really welcome you guys to this broadcast and the opportunity to share with those out there in Comics Land and the fans of Veteran Comic Con and your fans as well. So I want to just start by introducing everybody. I'm going to start with Nick Garza, Nicholas Garza. Wave to the fans, Nicholas. There you
Oh,
go. All right. Nick is a U.S. Army National Guard veteran. He is the founder and primary artist for Torrid Comics. And he is putting out work and comic books and new characters all the time. So, welcome. Thank you for being with us, Nick.
thank you.
Next is Ronald Seaman. Ron is a 25-year Army veteran. Ron was medically retired and subsequently spent 3 years in and out of various hospitals around the country dealing with his numerous physical injuries that he suffered. But Ron is also an award winning cosplayer whose cosplay handle is Aracknoid3. He began really building costumes as therapy for himself. And I know that you've become an absolute enthusiast and believe that everyone should experience cosplay at least once in their lifetime.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And we also have Ed Coffey. Ed, wave to everybody. Ed is also a U.S. Army veteran. He's the owner of Redwood Comics, which is a veteran and AAPI owned publisher. He writes and illustrates story, primarily focusing on themes outside of the superhero genre. And last but not least, we've got Chuck Carter. Hello, Chuck. Chuck is a U.S. Navy veteran, so we've got a few of them. We've got a few of the branches covered here. You're a little bit outnumbered by the Army guys, but
That's okay. Also by age, I'm pushing 70. So
there you go. There you go. I'm in the same boat with you, so I understand.
Not too
Uh,
far along.
yeah.
but Chuck is a Navy veteran. He's a video game and film artist, very well known for video games that we all are familiar with, like Myst, co creator of Myst. And what was my favorite? I think I've told you this before, Chuck, but my absolute favorite. I'm too old to be a real gamer. I guess I'm not, um, but my favorite. He was known for Westwood's Command and Conquer Red
Oh,
Alert series. Oh,
wow.
my absolute favorite to this day. So
It's the
Chuck
most fun
also.
I had on games.
Oh yeah, gosh, well, that's a whole nother conversation. I won't bore everybody with it. I can't get on the platform anyway, anymore. But just the most excellent games, and I know that there were hundreds of thousands of enthusiasts and users, if not more. And finally, Constance Pleasant. Constance is a revenue officer with the Internal Revenue Service, so keep your stuff straight, folks. But most importantly, in 2019, Connie became the founder and CEO of Veteran Comic Con, which has the mission this is a beautiful mission, and I love it, to capture the joy of reading through comic book creation, to use art as an outlet of creative expression for mental health, and also to introduce successful artists to the military population for inspiration and professional development. A very noble mission, and we have examples of those professionals with us today who are making an impact in the art, but also with the military community, and that's incredibly important. I want to start with you, Connie, if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration.
My father, who's an Army veteran, in his later years, he used art therapy during one of his treatments while he was at the Veterans Hospital. He was it was uplifting for him, and he was really amazed that he had any kind of artistic talent. I still have his very first waterwork
Oh,
uh,
wow.
painting. Uh, and so, and I thought about how art therapy helps veterans and how it helps to eliminate the symptoms of PTSD. And me being involved with Comic Cons, I thought I could uh, combine everything together and create a Comic Con for veterans.
All right. Such a creative idea and such a successfully creative idea. We're all grateful to you for the creation of Veteran Comic Con. Um, Speaking of therapy, Ronald, let's hear a little bit more about your story. I mean, you're the real vet here, 25 years in the Army. And of course, the result of those 25 years had some pretty significant impacts on you and your life, your health, your physical quality of life. Um, but tell us about your service and that result and the impact from a therapy standpoint that you got from the cosplay that you do.
All right, I didn't know what to do at the time, and everyone's doing Iron Man. My last name is Seaman, and so let me do a mashup. And I did a mashup, and it was the Iron Merman. I thought it'd be good for laughs and, one-time thing. Now, no matter where I go, whatever I bring, I have to bring that.
That's
And
the most popular one, huh?
it's crazy. I'm on the cover of a motorcycle magazine of all things. And it was kind of crazy, but it was really great meeting the people. And you see, a lot of them had the same things because only thing I knew about this was, like I said, I'm watching movies, bunch of nuts running around, and they really don't portray it right. And I've met military people. I met a general who cosplays, who's into that. So it's like that's something that was in me all the time. I just had no way to let it out. And it was necessity. I noticed, among other things that are wrong, I also have severe central vertigo. I can't go 5 minutes without something to do, or my wife would have to get me to bed, and that's it. So when I found out when I was being creative, as long as I was doing something, I had no problem. She had to yell at me to come and eat. Once I eat, I have to eat fast and get back to something. As you see right now, I'm in my music room, a musician also, and I had to stay in here, so I made sure I wouldn't miss this.
Uh,
You know, it's just one of the things you deal with.
yeah.
Um,
So the whole thing really, I mean, this has been absolutely therapy for you.
oh
This
yeah,
has been the thing that's been able to allow you to focus, to maybe push out some of the physical issues as well as the vertigo and things like that, to be able to put it in the background while you concentrate your creative energies
yes.
on
And
this.
I get to talk to a lot of people too. There's a have big following handicapped cosplayers,
Mm.
but they're not handicapped cosplayers, just cosplayers.
They're adapted. They're just
Yeah.
adapted
And
cosplayers.
hey, and
That becomes
sometimes we have the advantage because I turned my chair into a ship at one point.
Thanks for sharing. That's pretty powerful testimony, and we can see the impact that it has on helping you to heal. And I'm confident. I'm confident you're going to get beyond the physical stuff that you've got going on, and we're going to look forward to seeing you out at Veteran Comic Con in San Francisco in November. Okay.
Definitely.
All right.
I'll be
All
there.
right. Nicholas, you have been a comic book artist since you were a kid, really. What was your inspiration for becoming an artist? And just walk us through a little bit this path.
So early years, I would say cartoons definitely inspired me to draw. Big fan of Ninja Turtles and the Batman animated series and the X-Men, all the 90s stuff. And my father used to collect comic books, so I'd read the comic books and get all that inspiration.
Do you still have any of those comic books?
Not
Oh.
many. I do have one that he gave me. It was a rock and roll biography type book about Motley Crue. He was a big Motley Crue fan, so he
Okay.
gave me that one. But all the other, all most of my books are collected on my own now. So
Nice.
I've still got a few. I've still got a few from the '60s when I was a kid, and they're in pretty good shape. One day, one day we'll test the marketplace.
yeah.
So tell us about these. Now, tell us about what you've got going on right now. What are kind of the highlights that are happening with you as an artist and with Torrid Comics?
So right now I have a day job, so I just got promoted, so it's kind of eating up my creative time. But
Oh,
while
you're gonna have to get rid of that, or you kidding me?
yeah, it's the bills that have to be paid.
Oh, those. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Connie
so
works for the IRS. Maybe she can find you a loophole.
some tax write-offs.
Yeah.
So during in the evenings is when I get most of my work done for creative purposes. I did just so I did just finish a big project, which is kind of uh, my biggest project yet. Is I worked with a comic company called Ton Press,
Uh-huh.
and I did a rock and roll biography
Oh,
of
wow.
Run DMC.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I show right here. So I
Oh, fantastic. A finished product.
Yeah, and this one is actually in comic shops, and it's kind of all across the nation. Ooh, bad.
That's exciting. So I'm sure you're going to have a box load of those at Veteran Comic Con in
Oh,
November
yeah,
that you're going to be signing for people and all of that sort of stuff.
yeah,
So it's gonna explode through the city at that point in time. That's
yeah.
exciting. That's really, really exciting. All right. Future plans. Future plans. What are the
Uh,
big things that you've got that you just can't wait to get to?
Besides Veteran Comic Con
Yeah.
in November, I will be working on my own projects. I'll continue to pump out my characters, Bumper and Pinball. I just finished issue 6 with that, and it led me into a new area of creative process where I'm printing my own books now.
Oh wow.
So I'm
That's a
trying to
big step.
yeah,
That's a big step.
I'm trying to keep the costs down. So I found that I could buy a pretty high-end printer and print my own stuff myself to keep my costs. I'm trying to keep my cover price for my single issues down to $5,
Mhm.
and uh, the best way to do that was to print it myself. And I have some of those right here as well.
Wow.
That's amazing art. I tell you that's one of the things that I was incredibly impressed about when I was able to see the work that you brought to Veteran Comic Con 2023. You had a lot of people around your table. Your stuff was pretty popular, and we can see why. You're an absolutely fabulous artist, and we're thrilled about the big projects that are coming to fruition and the progress that you're making, and we're excited that you're going to be back at Veteran Comic Con 2024.
Yeah,
I want signed copies of everything.
I'll bring
All right. Speaking of comic book publishing, and you know, one of the other things that I got to say, Edward, in introducing you, is Ed has been, in his company Redwood Comics, has been one of the original founding sponsors of Veteran Comic Con. You guys are always there. You've been just such a backer of this effort, and I know that we all appreciate it. But you've also been a real highlight of these things. Tell us about Redwood Comics.
Sure, the comic book journey came about because of the film and television. I wouldn't say failures, because circumstance sort of um, uh, was at play here with the pandemic and then the WGA strikes. And so before the pandemic, I had written what was both a feature and a 1 hour drama, which is Rise, and which is the science fiction story about a squad of modern day soldiers who end up in the Civil War and have to keep themselves from interfering with the outcome of that war, and as well as getting entangled in the clandestine efforts to defeat the Confederacy. So,
and that's a cool thing about a lot of your comic stuff is outside of the typical superhero genre, and that's really something too. Because in a way, in my mind, you're really kind of expanding the genre in a way that it needs to be expanded.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it too is that. So you have to look at the market, right? Especially as a publisher, and there is a degree of fallout in superheroes on television, right? There's been a bit of a market decline, even in comic books, but independent comic books, even in the superhero genre, whether it's Kickstarter or the top two indie publishers or smaller publishers, they've had a 30 to 50% increase, whereas Marvel and DC have had a decline in their numbers, and so. Right now, there's sort of this renaissance of what comic books can be. And I will say that in the 90s, I read James O'Barr's The Crow. Younger, I think I was 11 years old when I picked up that comic. And all I knew was that, was the film and Brandon Lee. And then I just wanted to know, like, what was the source material? And up to that point, I had been just reading superhero comics. Spider-Man was one of my favorites. And so I read James O'Barr's The Crow, and it was this horror comic, but it was also, in a way, it was this grounded superhero, the spiritual superhero, that brought about these real mythical elements from Native Americans and just mythical aspects of this crow bringing someone back from the dead. And so I was like, oh, comic books can do this, and then I learned that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was also this wild out comic book in the 80s, and I was just like, whoa, I didn't realize how violent this was. And so I figured this is what comic books can be, right? And so but leading up to launching Redwood Comics, as I was intending to launch Redwood Studios, because I had a feature film that got an 8 out of 10 on the blacklist. It was a script that got an 8 out of 10 on the blacklist, and it was the script that got pitched around town, and it's gotten me the email addresses for managers and producers that says, when you have something new, send that script this way.
Yeah.
But the problem with the script is that, hey, the people we need to bring it to the theaters, you're sort of poking at them with this script. And so False Flag, just to give it some background, is a story about a single father who's mourning the loss of his son in the aftermath of a mass shooting. And so a conspiracy theorist comes to his town, gaslights the small town, and demands proof that the tragedy happened. And so it's just sort of, the way I've converted it from the screenplay to a comic book was to make it a horror comic about this guy who was haunted by the ghost of his son, and who was hounded by this monster of a conspiracy theorist. And sort of drawing it in a way that sort of brings back, the EC Comics, horror comics, and trying to give it that style and that look, but also telling this sad and grounded story of what happens when you interrupt a parent's, anyone's, but let alone a parent's grieving process, and an all too common occurrence, unfortunately, in our country right now.
Yeah.
And so it was that piece. And so before the comic book was conceived, Rise had already been written and drawn as a first issue comic. The agent that I had at the time failed to deliver it to publishers. He also failed to deliver the script to the studios that had asked for it, which is Byron Allen's media company, Amazon, Lionsgate. And so I was just like, I guess, I'll do this myself. And so Rise was kickstarted, I used Seed and Spark, which was a smaller crowdfunding site, and I managed to get it funded, and so from there I was like, all right, I think this has a general degree of interest. I have done Comic-Cons, and there was this interest that kind of surprised me about it, and wanting more. And I know I only had that one issue, and people are asking about that second. But I had intended to make False Flag, which the first issue should be done soon. And if you haven't already, it's actually on Zoop. So if you go to zoop.gg/c/false-flag, you can sign up to get notified. The more people that sign up to get notified,
That's
it
great.
moves that title up.
Give us that address again.
It's zoop.gg/c/false-flag. And I know that's the other thing you do is you can go to redwoodcomics.com, click on the false flag title, and it'll lead you to probably an easier way to explain it, but it'll take you to the Zoop site.
I mean, that's powerful.
But I mean,
the essence of comics and what makes a good comic. You say that you kind of made this translation from film to comic. It all comes down to exceptional storytelling. If you can capture exceptional storytelling within the context of whatever form, you're gonna have a winner. And so, making that decision, and hopefully it's a decision that really pays off. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to hear about it. I also want to see the film, so you keep the film.
We'll hopefully get there. I have a favorite. I did some concept art for a producer in Atlanta. Hopefully I can call in a favor and see if she and I can get together and maybe get somewhere with the short version that I had written. We paused it because of the WGA. I paused it at least because of the WGA strike, and I said I don't think Fate's going to have it right now. So let me just jump into it as a comic book, and it seems to be going a lot faster than the second issue of Rise. So
all right, well, let's use this platform right here. A lot of people are going to see this video and see these interviews, so let's make sure all of you guys go to Zoop and subscribe so that we can get this project really rolling, really moving. Because if you haven't seen Ed's work, you can count on the fact that this is high quality stuff that's really going to bring a lot of enjoyment to you and all of those that you introduce it to. So, yay.
Thank you.
All right. Chuck, we just found out, I would have known if I'd done better research, but we just found out that you are no longer involved with Standard Magic, because it is no longer. Tell us about what you're doing now. I mean, you've done such amazing stuff. I know that you're not ready to just, because you're a creative, to just stop doing amazing stuff. So what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, just turned 67, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Sorry, my camera keeps unfocusing. So, I mean, I don't ever envision stopping, to be honest, doing stuff. I mean, how can you? It's something that's as much a part of you as breathing. And I'm also kind of ADD, so I like doing a bunch of different things. I wish to God I could just focus on one thing for more than like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I've never been able to do it either.
I constantly bounce around from things, but I find that it does allow me to do a lot of different things, and storytelling in as many ways as you can do it. From an illustration to an interactive world to games to working on films with other people. It's all about getting out the story, getting out something that's in your head that you can share with people. So currently, over the last few months, I've I don't know how I fell into it, but I've been mucking around with AI art a lot. And, surprisingly, a couple of game companies hired me to do AI art for them.
Okay.
And, I know that AI art is such a controversial thing, and I never ever say draw it like this or do it like that. I just do a prompt and I refine it, take it into Photoshop, paint over it, do a bunch of other things with it. And I found that
it's more like an AI frame.
It's more like, yeah, exactly. It's kind of, I sort of start off with it. It's like, back in the early days, we would hire concept artists to do a lot of our stuff. And, this is kind of one of the things very controversial because it does put some people out of work. And
yeah, well, I'm a voice actor, and right now, as a matter of fact, we're in the middle of a strike.
Yep.
against the video game manufacturers. It's not centered on the art; it's centered on the voice. But all of these areas are being impacted, obviously, by AI. It's a big thing. So we just got to get our hands around.
Just have to get our hands around, wrap your head around it a little bit. I use it to more as an inspiration, as a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have an enormous Pinterest page, where I have thousands and thousands of images on my Pinterest.
Yeah.
But the problem with it now is that 90% of what I'm seeing is AI, and it's kind of like it's kind of lost me, because you can tell AI art. People say you can't tell the difference. You can.
You can.
There's a lot of little subtle hits to it. And that's why when I go into stuff, I try to do some Photoshop stuff. But these guys wanted me to do stuff for them. And, they pay well. And so I knocked out, worked about a month doing about 50, 60 pieces for them, for a couple more game promotional things for them, for like presentations and things. That's just one thing. The big stuff that I've been doing lately is this year I've been lucky to have about 4 or 5 projects from NASA. And NASA has been keeping me extremely busy. I just wrapped up one big one on the search for life on Mars, which I got to build a lander that never existed before, working with their scientists, with an engineer.
Yeah, that NASA work,
3D
that's
modeled it all out. And it was fun. I had all these things in it that, how it collects it, how would a lander drill down 100 meters into the Martian soil without creating a giant rig designed to punch a core sampler and drill downwards. They've got the technology now to do it from a tether, which I thought was really kind of cool. So I had to kind of figure out, what would this look like? And so I got a chance to build that all out and then produce a few other illustrations to go along with it about how they would find life, where they would find life, and stuff. And that was a lot of fun. And then prior to that, I did something on Neptune and its moons and the search for life in some of these large water worlds that are circling some of the gas giants.
Well, that's fascinating. You're getting to live in these environments. I mean, you're working for NASA.
Pretty much, yeah. These projects are a lot of fun. They kind of exercise the science-y part of my head, But on the other flip side of that, I'm starting a game company with a group of people, former Standard Magic, Liam Sullivan. You remember Liam?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Liam and a couple of other people from EA and I are gathering a group of talented artists here in Maine to start a small game company, and we're going to redo Zed as our first project.
Oh, how fun!
And we're going to do it the way I wanted to, because when Cyan publishes Zed, I had to fit Zed into a box for them, and I really had to stop it down from where it was supposed to be.
Had to fit in a little commercial
It was a much bigger
box.
vision originally. And but Cyan didn't have any money to really follow that through, and they didn't have the backing for a lot of things that I wanted to do with the game, but I needed to get the game out, and I did. And just to be honest, the game it had 50 and 50 on Steam, as far as I recall last time I checked. 50 people, 50% loved it, absolutely loved it, said it changed their life. 50% hated it,
I think that's the game world, though, isn't it?
It's the game world, because it wasn't Myst. They wanted to see another Myst, and I was one of the Myst guys, and I didn't want to do Myst. I it said that in my Kickstarter. We had a successful Kickstarter and everything for helping us fund it, and unfortunately, Eager Games folded back in during COVID. And I just got all the rights returned to me for Zed, so I'm working with a couple people. And we're just starting to redo that.
Oh, that's fantastic! You have the rights, so now you can expand it to be what you originally envisioned it to be.
These games are amazing. What they can do now. But honestly, one of the thing is, I mean, all what I do was inspired by comics. When I started out as a kid, I was wanting to be a comic book artist, and I was just looking around for a comic that we produced in high school, and we had published it. We published 1,000 copies of it, sold about 600 copies of it through the backs of all the different, interview magazines. I can't even remember the names of them anymore, back of comics back then, back in the 70s, the mid 70s. And, and I've had the luck to work with some amazing comic book people, like Steve Gerber was a partner in a game company we started back. I don't know if you know what Steve Gerber is, but Steve invented Howard the Duck along with Val Mayrick, who's a friend of mine.
I hate to share this with you. You said you just turned 67. I'm 18 days away from 67.
Oh wow!
So,
Well,
yeah.
happy pre-birthday. It's
So
not so bad. It's not so bad. I
it's
just
not
started up
bad
rock
at all.
climbing again,
Yeah,
so you do a lot.
absolutely. I still
Yeah,
do 100 miles a week on my bicycle, so
there
you,
you
you
go.
just you just got to know how to learn to appreciate what it is. But
Yep.
coming from that same background, when you're talking about this idea of starting in these comics in the 60s and the 70s and the evolution that's happened with comics that's fueling these other industries, that is the foundation of it. Because
Oh yeah.
that's where
Well,
people said, we can do what we want. We can do what we want in terms of what we're creating, in terms of characters and how we carry a storyline and all of those amazing things. So this really is kind of the evolution of the basic comic book as we saw it back in the 70s.
well, I mean, comics are, they've moved into movies, obviously. I mean, most people didn't even realize there was probably a comic book involved. Kids today probably don't even know there was a comic book
Yeah.
involved with a lot of what they're seeing out of the Marvel movies. And I don't know where DC is going, but but for me, like what Edward's doing, is that more serious comic. When I was in Cleveland, I got to know some guy, um, Harvey Picar. I don't know if you guys know who that is or not, from
Mm-hmm.
American Splendor.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew a couple artists that worked with him, Jerry Shamray. And Jerry unfortunately passed away a couple years ago, last year, I think, actually. And Val Mayerick, I turned Val Mayerick onto Harvey, and I got to know him pretty well, and met R. Crumb through all that.
Yeah.
So Cleveland was that was sort of like this little, Superman came out of Cleveland. A lot of things came out of Cleveland, surprisingly. That little, armpit of the nation, as they call it, if you live from there. But all of us, I think, have been inspired by comics our entire lives. I mean, the very first thing I read when I was a kid, my aunt, when I was like 4 or 5 years old, plopped a box of comics down, and it's influenced me throughout my entire life. And just as it has everybody here, I'm gonna guess. And I have to say, Nicholas, I've never seen a studio that looks like it's been filmed in black and white. When I look at your image,
It's
you
so
got this
cool.
black beard, black hair. The only color is the t-shirt and your skin.
Yeah.
Everything else looks like it's just a black and white image. So
Got that whole vintage thing going on.
it's very cool. I like it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that was a very prescient thing to say relative to understanding the influence of comics. We've all been influenced by. It's really funny as you get older and you get back to the point where you can admit how significant comics were both in your life, but now you can revisit it. Now you can dive back into that world because you're old enough where nobody can tell you,
Right.
that's you need to grow up and get away from that. Hey, I am grown up. I'm way grown up. It's I know that comic books have had an influence on my entire life, and I won't spend time telling my story about that now, but it literally influenced the course of my life, even unbeknownst to me. Just my love for comics and the characters and the way that stories are told within comics. So, well, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on with all of you guys, and I just really want to thank you for sharing that with us. Connie, do you have anything that you'd like to ask our amazing panel here?
I I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I've been sitting here listening to everybody, and it reminded me of one of the reasons why I wanted to start Veteran Comic Con was to build a family. And so all this time I'm thinking, I want to build a family. I want to build a family. And I have a family here with Veteran Comic Con, and it just hit me now. So since 2019, I've been building a family, and I feel like I've um, successfully created a family, and I'm looking forward to expanding it in the future.
Yeah, you got a brood of cousins right here. Absolutely. I can tell you, I've really enjoyed getting to know these guys, even just, being able to see them or talk to them a couple of times a year. I look forward to kind of expanding those relationships. I'm going to, jump on Chuck as soon as he gets that company started because I know he's going to need work. He'll have to let me know who the creative director is going to be. But I'm also really excited about about the stuff that Nick has coming up, and Edward, your stuff is amazing. This is really good news, and we can say, Connie, that you heard it here first. But I think the most important thing is that knowing now what you guys are up to, all of your exciting stuff that's coming up, that we as a community of comic lovers, of veteran Comic-Con folk, that we get behind you guys individually and do whatever we can do to help expand the opportunities that you're creating. So take care, guys. Thank you again. And just good fortune with all the wonderful things that you're doing. Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Night.